Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I had a viewer ask a question, and they made a point about the ketones that you find in people's urine. They get excreted from the body, that ketones have calories. You are wasting calories if you're in a state of ketosis and there's ketone bodies being excreted from the body. In fact, he said one of his professors pointed it out, that it probably wasn't a lot. It was probably at most 100 calories, but it is there. So shouldn't ketogenic diets have a metabolic advantage? So let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. All right, this is one of those things that is absolutely true, that ketosis can waste a little bit of calories. No one's arguing against that. No one's arguing against that at all, but that still doesn't provide a metabolic advantage, and we're going to get to that in a minute. We're going to get to that in just a minute. But let's talk about the loss of calories that occurs. All right. Yes, the human body will excrete ketones. It will excrete ketones, not just in your urine, but in your fecal matter, and even in your breath, in your sweat, everything. What are ketones? Ketones are partially burned fat molecules, right? They're partially burned fat molecules. So that means that they do have a little bit of calories left. And you know what? Even people who lose large amounts of body weight, sometimes you aren't even on a ketogenic diet, will excrete a little bit of ketones also. The reason for this is that the human body is not 100% efficient. All right, people tend to think of the human body, because we do survive famines and ice ages and everything else, as being these finely tuned machines that use every single calorie of fuel that they get with 100% efficiency, exactly like a finely tuned fuel injection system on a car that has a computer monitoring everything and adjusts the air-fuel ratios every microsecond, as the engine changes RPMs and it measures the exhaust. They think it's that fine-tuned. It actually isn't quite that fine-tuned. It's pretty good, but it's probably not as good as a finely tuned engine with really good computer controls and sensors. It's not quite that good. It does waste a little bit of fuel. And you know what? Cars waste a little bit too, though. You know what? Every engine that man creates just about seems to waste a little bit of fuel. Well, the human body does also. The pathways by which it does so is different for different things going on in the body. But yeah, there's definitely some ketones causing some loss of fuel there. Partially burned fuel molecules. Just think of it as almost the waste product left, just like, hydrocarbons that are in the emissions in a car engine or a jet engine. It's a very, very similar concept. It's almost an identical concept. So car people will get that one. They'll understand that one. But that doesn't give it a metabolic advantage. In fact, when we go to look at them, like I've said before, when you look at the different studies that have been done, if any diet type seems to have a metabolic advantage when you compare carbs to fat, it's the higher carb, lower fat diet. That's the one that has the most metabolic advantage compared to the fat, but it's a very tiny amount. In some cases, it isn't there. It's immeasurable. In some cases, it's as high as 2 or 3% difference, meaning as many as 2 to 3% more calories get turned over. But you know which one has the even higher one? Is their ultra-high protein diets. But those have their own set of problems. But yeah, protein is the macronutrient that you have the most waste from, meaning the most energy is wasted trying to utilize it. One reason high protein diets in general work, that's why you don't tell people to follow a 10% calorie diet when trying to lose fat, like a 10% protein diet. No one would do that. That's insane. Higher protein diets work pretty good when you're trying to lose weight. And high protein, meaning probably 30% or more of your calories coming from protein, tends to be a pretty effective method for fat loss. But that's not what we're comparing. We're comparing the high carb versus the high fat. So the keto advocates think that they should have a metabolic advantage there, but when we do the studies, it doesn't exist, and it's a slight metabolic advantage in some studies to the higher carbs. Well, what you need to consider is that the human body is not an efficient engine. It's going to waste fuel. It's going to waste fuel. On a ketogenic diet, that waste of fuel comes in the form of half-burned fat molecules. Well, wouldn't you expect that? Because you're burning fat as a primary fuel source when you're on an ultra-high-fat diet, right? Your calorie deficit is cutting into your body fat, but most of your day-to-day fat burning, or your fuel burning, is coming from body fat, or not body fat, but dietary fat. It's a large percentage of the fuel that you burn because it's what you're eating. It's what you're putting in the fuel tank, so that's what you're burning. So it's going to have byproducts. It's going to have waste products in the form of ketones. When you are burning large amounts of glucose, you're eating a very high carbohydrate diet, your body tends to have waste in the form of body heat. Carbohydrates have a higher thermic effect in the body. They have a higher thermic effect than fat does. So because of that, they tend to elevate body temperature a little bit. And that happens in the mitochondria of your muscle cells. That's one of the primary places where that happens. Oftentimes, excess carbohydrates, and that doesn't even mean excess carbohydrates through the day. That could be excess carbohydrates from one big meal. You eat a bunch of carbs in one meal. A lot of times you get warmer, you get hotter. Sometimes you sweat, right? That is the thermic effect of it. That is those carbohydrates hitting the mitochondria of your muscle cells, and then those mitochondria releasing energy and heating up. Your muscle cells are getting hotter. All right, that is energy being used. So what you're dealing with, you're not bypassing the calories in, calories out with either method, and that's what people need to understand. You are expending those calories as extra body heat. Keeping your body at normal operating temperature is part of your metabolism. All right, keeping yourself stable is part of what you use calories doing. Maintaining homeostasis in your body requires energy. But in this case, there's extra heat that is put off as a result from the carbohydrate overloading. You know, a lot of it tends to go to muscle cells for storage and everything. You burn it for fuel, and you tend to store the fat you eat when you eat a bunch of carbs. Because it doesn't need to burn the fat, it's got carbohydrates for fuel. That's its primary fuel source. But when excess carbohydrates are introduced, they aren't actually stored as body fat. They tend to be burned off as body heat. Because your body doesn't have an unlimited storage sink for carbohydrates. It has an unlimited fat storage sink in your fat cells. Carbohydrates, your body can only store so much, and it doesn't convert them to fat. It has to do something. It tends to burn them off as body heat. And the more carbs you eat, the more thermic effect you get. So that's your waste from the carbohydrates. All right, it is wasting them. It's wasting those calories because the human body isn't 100% efficient. So on a high carb, low fat diet, you get loss of energy, or loss of the energy from the food that creates a metabolic advantage through thermic effect, through body heat. When you're on a very high fat, lower carb diet, you get a metabolic advantage compared to nothing, I guess compared to air. And either way, it's not a direct comparison because the carbohydrates win, but if you had a metabolic advantage or at least a wasting of calories on a ketogenic diet, it comes in the form of excreting half-burned fat molecules. Both of them have waste. Both have waste. So when you understand it from that context, it starts to make sense that, okay, both of them have calories that are wasted. Both forms of intake like that have calories wasted. Now, protein overfeeding has an even larger waste. And that's because breaking down protein into a usable form burns off calories in and of itself. Just to use the protein that you eat for anything expends calories. I mean, and the protein can then be burned as fuel, so then you've got a fuel source, so it has a caloric value. But there's a waste associated with that. And then there's a waste associated with converting extra protein into carbohydrates that you can burn as fuel. So the most wasteful that has the highest thermic effect is the protein, but no one's talking about that. We're talking about high fat versus high carbohydrates. So ultimately, both of them have waste products, though. They're just two different forms, but if one of them has the metabolic advantage over the other, it's the carbohydrate because it can tend to have a little more waste product in some cases, a little more waste of calories than the higher fat diet does. So ultimately, it wins out on the metabolic advantage in spite of these waste products being produced. But here's the thing. None of this changes calories in, calories out. None of it changes it. You know, some people are going to be like, well, Jason, why don't you practice what you preach? Why don't you prove that? What do you mean I do prove it? The fact that I'm not ripped and shredded proves exactly what I'm saying. People say, what? How does that work? Because I eat a lot of calories. And I eat clean as fuck. I do cardio every day, yet I'm not ripped. Why? Because I eat too many calories to get ripped. It's very simple. I eat a lot of food. And it doesn't matter whether you're on a ketogenic diet or a high carb diet or an ultra clean diet or a diet of Pop-Tarts and fucking pizza. If you eat a lot of calories, whether it's from brown rice or from eggs, if you eat extra calories, you don't burn much body fat off. That's the reality. It doesn't matter how much cardio you do. if you're still consuming as many calories as you burn every day, you're not going to lose weight, even if you do 3 hours of cardio a day and you eat the cleanest, most bro diet anyone's ever seen. If you live on a diet of nothing but sweet potatoes, brown rice, broccoli, and oven-baked chicken breast, you still won't lose a single ounce of body weight if you do not create a caloric deficit. And that's what people need to understand when it comes to these things. They all have their advantages of how they waste energy. But you're still bound by calories in, calories out, because guess what? The ketones that you're urinating out, the 50 calories of ketones that you might be urinating out or excreting out every day, guess what? That counts as part of your calories out. Right? Calories in, calories out. That's part of the calories out. Calories going out of your body. Does that start to make sense now? You're getting rid of calories. How about the extra carbohydrate calories that you're burning off as body heat? You're burning them off as body heat. That's also calories out. Neither one of these methods breaks the rules of calories in, calories out. Neither method breaks it. And that's what people need to understand. So neither method breaks it. You're still bound to those laws, to those rules. These are both within explainable physics for calories in, calories out. Even though they're wasting calories, they're still expending them. They're getting them out of the body. And ultimately, it's still about calories. And that part has to be pointed out over and over and over again. All people are looking at here, though, is that hopefully these are people who are looking for this metabolic advantage, understand that it's calories in, calories out. They're just hoping to find a method to get the most calories out without doing extra work to achieve it. And that's all this is really about, ultimately. It's still just about calories and energy and thermodynamics. Because that is what weight gain and weight loss are controlled by. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.